Today we have several updates in NHL news and rumors from around the NHL, including the latest on Mitch Marner, Jake Gardiner, and Patrick Marleau. Plus, we also have some trade rumors on Julius Honka of the Dallas Stars. We also have a signing in St. Louis to discuss, and we finally have a decision on Justin Williams' future. We'll get into all the latest coming up next. So welcome back here to Top Shelf Hockey. As I mentioned, we had some news and rumors to discuss here today from a variety of teams around the NHL. Let's get started first of all with longtime forward Justin Williams finally making an announcement on his future. Now, he did not use the word retirement, but he did indicate that he would be stepping away from the NHL for the coming season for at least the first part of the season. So he's not going to be signing with an NHL team. He won't be reporting to training camp with Carolina or anybody else, has not signed a contract, but he did not indicate he was officially retiring and not ruling out completely a return in the future. Maybe we'll see some kind of in-season signing or return before the end of the year, kind of like we saw with the Predators and Mike Fisher a couple of years ago. Maybe something like that happens. Maybe it doesn't. Maybe this is the end for Williams, but ultimately he was not ready to completely say 100% that he's ready to hang him up, but he still seems undecided and at least not ready to commit to going through the grind of another NHL season. But if this is the end, Mr. Game 7, Justin Williams has had a terrific NHL career, Stanley Cup champion, really delivered in a lot of big moments throughout his career, and certainly deserves the opportunity to make a decision, and obviously his family will come first here. But a great career. Will be interesting to see how the Carolina Hurricanes proceed without him, because they're definitely not going to have him for at least the beginning of the season. Will they name a new captain? Obviously, it's a big blow from a veteran leader on that team, so we'll see how they proceed and adjust things accordingly. But either way, will remain to be seen if this is the end or not for Justin Williams in the NHL. Now, we do have another signing to discuss as well. Ivan Barbashev, restricted free agent with the Blues, has come to terms on a new 2-year contract. It was believed that he could possibly end up playing over in the KHL if a contract agreement wasn't reached with the Blues before training camp got underway or before the season started. It was reported that he was looking somewhere in the neighborhood of $2 million or so, and that the Blues were closer to, somewhere between 1 and 1.5, which ultimately is where they ended up. They ended up with $1.475 million on a 2-year contract. Barbashev will again be a restricted free agent at the end of this contract, but he certainly did have a nice season for the Blues last year. Was an important piece in their bottom six for them winning the Stanley Cup last year. So we'll see how much more he can progress and see how things go here for the coming year. And obviously we'll see if the Blues decide on his future at the end of this contract. But another RFA scratched off the list here, but we do have plenty more RFAs, especially the big names out there. There's not much movement as of yet, which we might as well segue into next here and get started with Mitch Marner of the Toronto Maple Leafs. Now, Luke Fox of Sportsnet has his latest piece out indicating that he feels that Marner and the Leafs will ultimately end up agreeing on a bridge contract somewhere around 2 or 3 year term. The main reason for that being that on a long-term contract, they're just way too far apart, and it just doesn't seem like that gap is going to be able to be overcome here by either side, and enough sacrifices to be made on either side to come to an agreement on a 6, 7, 8 year contract. And to be honest, I'm not really sure that Marner wants to go too long term anyway. Most of the other reports that we've seen out there kind of indicate he's looking for a 5 or 6 year contract at the longest, 7, 8 year deal. I'm not really sure, something he was overly interested in. It seems to be the trend with many of these young guys that they want to be able to cash in again in a short term when the salary cap is expected to be much bigger. There should be a big spike in NHL salaries in about 2 or 3 years time once a lot of the other US TV deals and everything kicks in. For the current year and probably one more year, the salary cap will be relatively stagnant, and that is expected to have a major increase likely after that. So obviously it makes sense that they feel like they can increase their overall career earnings, but of course signing shorter term deals, there are some risk involved. Obviously, of course, their play could decline. They could end up injured. A lot of things can happen that they can't control, but ultimately I guess they have to do what they feel is best to earn the most that they're able to do throughout their career. But ultimately we'll see what the Leafs and Marner come to do. But ultimately time is ticking away. We're not that far from training camp. We're past September now. There is really still some big names on the market, and really is the consensus around the NHL does seem like they're waiting for Marner to go first, at least in most cases, for a lot of the forwards in this situation. If he does end up doing a 2 or 3 year contract, I can't imagine that breaks double digits on the millions of dollars. You wouldn't think, but it was reported not that long ago that he was looking for basically the richest bridge deal in NHL history, around $10 million or so on a short-term contract. So we will see where Kyle Dubas and Mitch Marner's camp ends up coming to terms at some point. They will come to terms on a contract, and I would think as each day goes by here over the next week to 10 days, as we get really close to training camp kicking off, that the pressure is going to mount on both sides to get something done, and hopefully we'll have an end to this saga and we can all move on here and Marner gets under contract for at least a few years with the Maple Leafs. Now, regarding a couple of his former teammates, including Patrick Marleau, there's a lot of reports out there indicating that he might have interest to go to the Edmonton Oilers. Ken Holland, the GM of the Oilers, thinks that they could use some more veteran leadership. They obviously have a need for some wingers who can score, and even though Patrick Marleau's not quite the player he used to be, he certainly can provide that veteran leadership. There's no doubt about that. And he might be able to still provide, 15, 18, 20 goals, depending on who he's playing with, of course. If he gets a chance to play more with McDavid or Draisaitl, clearly you would expect him to put up more goals, more points, but I guess we will see where they would slot him in that lineup. But apparently there is interest on both sides. I don't think you can completely rule out a return to San Jose at this point, but at the same time, there is a lot of reports out there that the Sharks are not, absolutely guaranteed or really all that keen on bringing Marleau back. I do think Joe Thornton is more likely, but you've got to wonder as well, because that Doug Wilson and the Sharks are working on something, because they have over $4 million in cap space, which realistically, if they wanted to bring back Thornton and Marleau, would be more than enough to satisfy those two contracts. And ultimately, neither one of them are signed. So I would think that Wilson's working on something behind the scenes. We haven't really heard a lot of leaks or information out of San Jose, so it's not really clear what that might be. But ultimately, Doug Wilson's always generally working on something to make that team better. But what exactly it is will remain to be seen here. But I wouldn't be shocked if it was maybe related to goaltending. I know that's been an area of concern over the last year or two. Obviously, the blue line's pretty well set. That Burns and Karlsson and Vlasic are going to eat up a lot of the minutes there. So I wouldn't expect anything major on the back end that way. Maybe some more scoring to maybe replace what Pavelski brought. That might be a possibility as well. But either way, I guess we'll see what the Sharks do. But it's certainly by no means a confirmed thing that Thornton and Marleau both return to the Sharks, and the Oilers might be an option for Marleau if San Jose is not interested. Now, one of Marner's other former teammates, or at least right now former teammate Jake Gardiner, defenseman who we thought would be the top defenseman on the UFA market, still remains unsigned. As we've discussed numerous times, it appears as though many believe that he has a handshake deal with the team, but you know what, that necessarily might not be the case. I think there's lots of teams out there that have interest, but he may not have been able to get that home run long-term big money contract that many thought he would in the beginning. Maybe it's due to that back injury. Hard to say exactly what changed on the market for Jake Gardiner, but Elliot Friedman lately has been talking about the fact that he feels there's about 3 teams that kind of make sense, really even a 4th team to an extent, being the Montreal Canadiens, the Detroit Red Wings, the Winnipeg Jets, and to a degree the Buffalo Sabres. But I think the Sabres would only go down the Gardiner road if they did make a trade on the blue line with a guy like Ristolainen, who we've discussed a bunch of times, because there are reports from himself that he wants a fresh start and would welcome a trade. But ultimately that has not happened, and without the Sabres making additional moves on the blue line, I just don't see it happening. Doesn't really make sense. But the Jets do make sense because of everything they've lost. They have a lot of holes in their blue line. Montreal certainly continuing to look to improve that left side of their defense, so they do make sense. And the Red Wings are a team that's kind of rebuilding as well and could use some more veteran help back there. They have some other guys like Nicholas Kronwall, for example, who's not quite clear if he's returning or not. There's still some question marks there, and the Red Wings very well might be a team that would make sense on a shorter term contract as well. But it certainly remains to be seen where Jake Gardiner goes. But those are the 3 teams that Elliot Friedman believes that are the most likely for Gardiner to sign with. I know we've talked about the Habs before. There seems to be a mixed review out there amongst Habs fans who watch this channel on whether or not they want to have Mark Bergevin go after Gardiner or not. But I guess we will see. But let me know what you think is the most likely destination amongst the teams we discussed here on Jake Gardiner. Where is the most likely landing spot for him before the season starts? Staying with the Montreal Canadiens here here as well, there's another potential player that they might be targeting for their blue line, and that's youngster on the Dallas Stars, Julius Honka, who we've reported numerous times that likely would need a fresh start. I think it's safe to say that he's been passed by on the Dallas Stars depth chart. He's not really getting a whole lot of an opportunity, hasn't panned out to what they thought he would be, and likely needs to go somewhere else to see if he can kind of rejuvenate his NHL career and become a regular NHL player with more of an opportunity to play a bigger role with the team. And there are reports indicating that the Habs are interested. I do think there's some mild interest for some other teams as well. I don't think you could discount the Winnipeg Jets from that one either, but obviously being with the Jets and Stars being divisional rivals might be a little bit less likely that they make a trade together, although that's type of thing has certainly happened more recently than it has in the past. But Honka's a young player that I think many teams would take a chance on. The Dallas Stars are also in a situation with their salary cap situation that they very well could move a player to give them a little bit more flexibility, and obviously he could be a guy, like I said, they wouldn't need anything much in return, maybe a prospect, maybe it's a second or third round draft pick. I'm not sure what the asking price exactly would be from Jim Nill and the Dallas Stars, but I wouldn't think it would be a whole lot, and there's certainly teams out there like Montreal, like Winnipeg, who could take a chance and bring the youngster in to see if there's a good fit there longer term. Now lastly here, I want to touch on Nashville Predators captain Roman Josi, who many expected to get a long-term extension with the Predators this summer, and that is yet to come to be. Of course, Roman Josi's had a very busy summer as well. He recently got married. He's got a lot going on in his life. There has been some talks. There was a recent interview conducted with Josi where he did acknowledge the fact that there had been contract talks, but it wasn't something he was overly concerned about. He said he's basically letting his agent deal with that. He's getting himself ready for the season. He wants to stay in Nashville longer term. And that it'll work itself out, that between the team and his agent, they'll figure out a way to get it done, so he wasn't overly worried about it. So he's saying all the right things, saying many of the things that you would expect him to say, and I don't think there's really any reason to believe that the deal won't get done, but I do think there's a pretty decent possibility that maybe before the Predators want to get too deep into that negotiation and inking him to a long-term deal, they have a lot of other guys on longer-term deals as well, and maybe they'd like to make a move to kind of rejig their salary cap situation for beyond this year. Obviously, Roman Josi right now is 29. He'd be 30 at the end of the season, so he'd be 30 starting his next contract. If they want to go 7 or 8 year contract, that could very well prove to be a little bit risky in the second half of that, but I'm not sure if that's maybe a sticking point or not. But either way, like I said, the Predators have a lot of long-term deals already in place, and it's been rumored for some time that maybe a guy like Kyle Turris would be on his way out, especially after they signed Matt Duchene, but they've yet to be able to facilitate that trade. Not really sure how seriously they're looking into it, but I would think with all the forwards they have under contract now, especially at the center position, when you look at Ryan Johansson, Matt Duchene, Kyle Turris, they got Colton Sissons. Sissons is making just shy of $3 million as well. Certainly not something that you really want to be paying to like a number 4 center, for example. So if you want Sissons to be number 3, ideally, that means either between Kyle Turris, Matt Duchene, and Ryan Johansson, one of them's going to have to play on the wing, and I would think Turris would be the most likely to do so, but I'm not really sure that would really be a great fit either. So I do think there's a decent possibility that maybe the Predators are looking to make a move before they get too deep into the Josi contract extension, but at this point, I don't think Predators fans really have anything to be concerned about. The fact that the deal isn't done yet, but I do think it's quite a possibility that a trade takes place to free up some longer term money maybe before they come to that conclusion on what that contract's going to be. So that is all your latest NHL news and rumors here for today. Of course, as always, want to know your thoughts and opinions on everything we're discussing here. So let me know what you think down in the comment section, and we will continue the conversation. If you're new to the channel, consider subscribing and turning on your notifications so you don't miss any future videos. Give this video a thumbs up if you enjoyed it as well. I'd appreciate it if you did. As always, thank you for watching, and I will catch you next time.